Welcome to Indian Community Podcast, where we explore stories of innovation and entrepreneurship. I am Rahul Mehra with my co-host Amit Gupta. Today we are joined by Vittal Ramakrishna, the force behind Kreate, empowering 20,000 plus creators to sell their homemade or handmade products directly to consumers. Vittal also founded Pod, a marketplace democratizing funding and fundraising, and has previously launched a successful crowdfunding platform in Germany, earning accolades as the fastest growing startup. We are eager to dive into Vittal's journey, uncovering the inspirations and challenges behind his ventures. So let's get started with some thought-provoking questions.
Hey, namaste, Vittal. Thank you and welcome to the Indian Community Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit.
Great. Vittal, let's start from the beginning. We all know you had a very successful business in Germany, and you stopped all of that and you came back to India. So, what brings you back to India?
I would rather start with how I moved out of India to begin with, and then what pushed me to come back to India. Right. I think on that
Perfect.
small note, I am from Bangalore in India, born and brought up in Bangalore. I graduated out of one of the not nicest years one can graduate out of. That was the year of 2008, when there was the financial depression happening across the globe. So I had to find something on my own means and built a small company, building websites and doing web developments for a lot of, I would say, retail stores back in Bangalore, knocking literally on their doors, asking them if they want a website, because that was something which was very fashionable back then, 2008, 9 and 10. So literally knocked on the doors, got in a couple of orders after several months of knocking on these doors. And we built a small prototype for a fashion retail giant currently under the Aditya Birla umbrella. But back then it was a standalone company called Madura Garments. Built a small fashion management system for them. And we sold that in 18 months. So that was, I still consider my first successful exit of building a product and selling it. Again, I'm mentioning this as a product, not a business, because I had no clue how to run a business. So it all started from there. And later on, although I come from an electronic engineering background, I was somebody who was passionate of electronics, still passionate about it. I got into investment management, project financials, totally flipped 180 degree into the industry, got into KPMG, started traveling across India. One of the client was outside of India, and one of them was Robert Bosch in Germany. Looking at my work, they said, why don't you get settled in either Germany or US? I loved road trips, and I'd always heard that Europe was a fascinating place for road trips. And most of my friends were moving to US. So I thought, let me do the unconventional thing and move to. So this happened end of 2010. And after that, definitely there's no looking back. I was part of investment management projects across the globe, handled several clients. Started off freelancing when I chanced upon somebody who was doing very interesting projects in crowdfunding. My first touch base of that term was in 2013 when I met somebody from the US and he was working out of a cafe. Met him. He said, you are in investments. I am doing something in helping ideas raise funds, which was unheard of back then, even for somebody coming from the investment circle. So that struck me. I understood that there's a lot of passion which people bring in, one to start some ideas, and there are equally fashionable people who are funding those ideas. So that took me to another level, and I got involved with him freelancing little by little. The bureaucratic process in Germany did not allow me to freelance right away. I had to do a lot of paperwork to go through as an immigrant there, get some approvals by the federal authorities just to become a freelancer. And post that, I understood that there is a niche which I could capture in the German speaking countries alone because I spoke fluent German. I built a small platform just to streamline the inflow of my requests from German-speaking countries and host those fundraising campaigns in US, which was typically Kickstarter and Indigo. I still remember one of my personal favorite crowdfunding projects, which happened to raise $1 million on Kickstarter, was SWAT Cats. As a child, I loved SWAT Cats as a comic cartoon, which was coming on Cartoon Network, if I remember, and we used to run back from school, watch the cartoon. I think that was for me the most important impact which happened in my life, that my favorite cartoon was able to get funded through some little efforts of mine back in US. So that for me triggered multiple things, of course. And I became a full-time crowdfunding consultant in Germany. Later on, started off a platform in Germany for only the German-speaking countries, which is the dark region, what we call Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. So that was one of the first platforms which started off early 2016. Got good amount of traction organically, bootstrapped. I was the solo founder. Again, being a solo founder in a very document-oriented bureaucratic country like Germany was definitely not easy. It wasn't one of the most founder-friendly countries as well. And me being an immigrant, I took a long route to get a lot of approvals. I eventually went on to hold a seat in the crowdfunding European Council by the end of 2019. So that was something which was really good, defining policies of how Europe looks at crowdfunding. And that was also the formation of European crowdfunding, which happened. So that for me was very interesting. Of course, as a business, I understood the nuances of what is profitability very early on, because I was not spending a lot on burning my expenses and stuff. So profitability was very early into my venture. That increased. And by the time that got acquired by a large media house in Germany, we were already profitable. And, a couple of $1 million in the exit is something which happened all in cash for me, and wide eye opener for me that there's plenty of money in the startup ecosystem. And I was investing from that time into multiple startup ventures. So I think 2016 onwards, startup as a terminology became a lot more mature in the European markets. I had very little to do with the Indian markets, even back then. 2019, I became the ambassador for the German side of Startup Exchange program, which wanted to have a trade talk with the Indian Foreign Ministry. So they took me along as an ambassador. That was an interesting move for me. And early 2020 is where I came to India, chanced upon meeting these delegates from both the startup ecosystems between India and Germany. I understood that a lot of potential was happening in India. And of course, I didn't know what to do, but I started investing in those startups, which I found interesting. And some of them were really unconventional startups, which I invested in, something which I wanted to learn the domain as well. So post my entry to India, which was still not a permanent move, I think I was just exploring what was happening here. And then COVID happened, right? We all went into a lockdown. And during this time, my whole road trip saga in India, just before the lockdown happened, I had chanced upon meeting an artisan selling handmade dolls at 1/10 of the price, which was available in the city limits of Bangalore. So this was in the coastal city of, in Karnataka. So this was for me the genesis of something extraordinary of what happened in the next several years called Kreate. So that was my entry to India, I would say. And I've never looked back.
That's a wonderful story, Vittal. There were so many elements of that story which are also nostalgic to me. SWAT Cats is also one of my favorites. In fact, let me ask you a SWAT Cat question. So do you like Razor or T-Bone better? Which one was your favorite
My
amongst those
favorite
two?
was T-Bone, because he was more of the happy-go-lucky kind of.
I think we're lucky. Yes, exactly. Razor meant business, and T-Bone was, the one with a little bit of humor in him.
Correct.
So that's cool. My personal favorite was also T-bone. So I think there's some synergy there. You spoke a lot about the the process that you went through to become who you are.
Yeah.
So that is also very inspirational, and it also tells us that there's so much of hard work that has gone in, right, to build this, especially with all that documentation that you had to do in Germany. So that was a very interesting piece of insight. Speaking about Germany, we all know German engineering is very famous for precision, reliability, innovation. What do you think Indian engineering is famous for, or is going to be famous for in the future?
See, I definitely would look at two segments, would put it out in German way. Germany's era of industrialization, took them to where they are today. I would still say during our independence, Indian independence is where all the wars ended, even for Germany. The unification still had not happened. The industrialization had just begun to them. Correct. So you just look at them, they're still as equivalent to how old we are as India. Correct. But what drove them entirely is phenomenal. Their passion to do the best of what they're doing. Correct. So for them, why they're very proud of their engineering is, I'll just give you a small example. When I was working with Germans, they come in to the office at 8 sharp dot. Okay. They start working from 8:1, 8:2. They start working. Absolutely no deviations at all till the lunch break. Their lunch is from 12 to 12:30, 30 minutes, not beyond it. Again, I'm not trying to generalize everybody, but this is what I experienced. Till 12, there's no shift of their head from left to right. Okay. They're just doing what they're able to do and the best way. You speak to anybody, they say, I'm here for this reason. I've got this opportunity to work and deliver this. My role is to deliver this. Right. So they were very clear on their roadmap. They were very clear on their project management aspect in delivering what had to be delivered in the best way. Correct. So this is what took their medium scale industries to those heights. If you talk of Germany, it's their medium scale industries, which is the backbone for their economy. So when you look at the same perspective from the Indian side, Indian economy is not entirely dependent on engineering alone. Okay. So that is how I would like to put this. We are not rebuilding a nation, unlike other countries. We did not go through a war-torn aspect. We were colonized. We just look at it from historical point. We understood what was trade much before people came. So this is why trade, medium-scale industry still holds good to India. And Indian engineering, when you look at it, we are people who try to play smart in the work what we do. That sometimes backfires. That also leads to some more into innovation. Correct. So there is always that risk and rewards, how we put it out from the Indian perspective. You have two sets of people when you look at it. Even I think in the US Indian diaspora, when you set it out, there are people who have been working in the corporate from decades together. They have been doing good what they have been doing. They don't want any new challenges in their life because they are settled. Then there are certain set of people, which is increasing, of course, right, who don't want to keep doing the same way conventionally again. They want to move out of that. They want to keep trying out new things. Now, this passion and risk-taking ability is something which is higher in Indians as compared to Germans. Germans are very happy with 8 to 5 working. They don't want any deviation. One company, two companies, forever. Nothing else. We are always hungry. I very recently in one of the TED Talks, where I put out was, there is also that philosophical significance, because they say that we are a land of seekers. We always seek new things. We are never content with certain aspects. That is why we don't stop at one thing. We keep looking, what after this? What after this? It just cannot keep us contented. So This is why I would say we are at that era where we have started looking inward. I think one of that brilliantly put out was Made in India or Make in India as a campaign. I think Indians have realized that a lot has to be looked within than rely on outside. So
Right.
even now, when you look at a lot of hoardings now, it says, made in Germany as an engineering part, or even the kitchenware where we have been seeing in hoardings in India is slowly
Right.
being moved away and shown as proudly made in India.
Correct.
I think that whole thing shows that we are moving into an era which will be completely owned by the Indian side. But of course, hard work cannot be substituted.
That is very true,
Yeah.
Vittal. In fact, I like the fact that Indians are not content with what they have, and that makes them also move forward, right? So you think that you can do better than this. You think you can achieve more than this, and that's the spirit which is going to keep fueling more innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, right? Because once you settle into that contentment zone, that's where things start hitting a plateau, right? Because you're not going to go beyond, over and beyond what your potential is, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where things are changing dramatically. In fact, when I look at the entrepreneurship circle within India these days, and I've been actively following a lot of these brands, and I'm so surprised at how much a lot of these companies have been able to achieve in how little of time, right? And that's just because of a new kind of passion and energy that's being putting in, right? I think maybe our work culture may not be as, let's say, laser focused as the German culture is, right? To not look left or right. We will continue to look left and right and have chai and all that stuff with our colleagues in the morning. But the energy and the enthusiasm is really there. And the whole Make in India, made by Indians,
Yeah.
the brand India is really shining in that sense.
Yeah. And I
Right. And yeah, it's okay. Please
I
carry
just
on.
wanted to add a small thing. A lot of backing for the German economy also comes from the government side, where prominence is given to R&D, right? So in every sector, when you look at it, that is only happening now when you see in the Indian perspective. What I've seen in a lot of startups earlier is, including me, I've done copycat of models which I worked on the Western side to the Indian audience, tweaking those models. But now people are talking of what is IP protected, what is a patented solution, right? I think
Correct.
that is increasing now as compared to what it was a couple of years ago. And I'm super happy about it.
Very true. I think the whole UPI concept, right? You see how it has come out from India and now is being adopted across the world. So that is one such great example, which is also supported by the government. So there's dramatic support there, and it's also an innovation which is fueling global recognition.
And also, creators like you, who are actually, I was very inspired by you finding a doll, in the coastal region of Karnataka, and then, that giving the idea of creation of Create.
Yeah.
So, how do you see its role in transforming the creator economy?
See, I would put it this way. Now, once you have the mindset of being a founder, right, or somebody who wants to start on their own, that becomes more like that gamble, like Vikram Betan. It is not going to leave you, right? That whole ideology, it will always keep haunting you to keep looking at new things.
Right.
And once you have been bitten by that entrepreneurial bug, you start thinking everything is a problem and you start bringing solutions for everything. When you're on the road, you see, oh, this is the issue. I would like to see, wow, okay, this is the issue. So I would like to bring a solution for this. That is how I would look at it. So I think for the creators side, I don't come from the domain at all. For me, it was all about creating a simple solution. So a simple solution for an existing problem. That is all I wanted to look at. And how scalable is the solution is something which we always look at when we are doing things. It might be not a unicorn idea. It is fine. At the end of the day, it is impacting lives. It is solving for somebody's livelihood. I think it's absolutely fine. It need not be a unicorn. I always tell people instead of one unicorn, there can be 100 minicorns. 100 companies which can do 100 crore business is absolutely good, worth it than having and rooting for just one unicorn. So something which I am a big advocate of.
Absolutely.
So I would say when we started off onboarding these small handmade sellers, there were earlier restrictions with multiple platforms that certain registration is mandatory, including the big e-commerce platforms. So we were one of the first to introduce a threshold limit for such sellers, telling if you are able to sell within these threshold limits, you don't need a lot of documentation to sell through us. That is how we started off. And that took us in a positive side and started pouring in from all across communities. I think it spreads like a rapid fire, you know, it spreads like a wildfire when one seller is telling, you know what, I'm able to sell through this platform. At the end of the day, what these sellers want, they need sales, nothing else. They don't need fancy technology. They want to make a sale, make livelihood. If we are able to address that at scale, that's the best what we have done. Through that, I think we have touched close to around 26,500 sellers and their lives, through which I am able to think, wow, because of this platform or because of this idea, they and their family are able to tend to their lives. Now, I think no joy is greater to me than that. When sellers call and talk about that, I think that for me is much more superior feeling than anything else compared to other, I would say, businesses which I've run and I've been running as well.
The money is not needed beyond an extent. That's true.
True.
And if you have to give back, so you are giving back.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's right.
The one thing that I noticed, Vittal, is in Germany, when you had to establish your company, you had a lot of documentation and paperwork and let's say the whole red tapeism or bureaucracy, if we may say, or the process oriented or the level of detail that they required. I think with Kreate, you've eliminated, so you could sense a similar sort of a scenario over here, and you eliminating those barriers is empowering people. So that is, I think, a phenomenal approach.
Absolutely. I think when you just touch upon the entry barrier, see, any problem, any solution, 50% is always the entry barrier, right? So
Correct.
if you are able to reduce that friction and eliminate that, I think that is where most of the solutions can always be scalable. That is how I look at it. And with documentation, later on, GST came into place and mentioned that if you are able to sell any of your goods up to a certain limit of 20 lakhs, you are exempted from filing for GST, So you need not have a GST registration. This happened very recently. I was like, we already did this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? Certain threshold. So that more
was required but it was required for online registration, even for Amazon and all.
As a business is, but as a person who's sitting at home, and these people are not businesses, they are simply selling product from their home convenience to some set of people alone. So these are not, like I said, going to be big brands, but there are many brands which have started off from us, went on to grow at scale, became full-fledged businesses, raised funds on, Shark Tank, go pitch on there. So that is something which is more like conversion for all of those people who want to take it to those levels. There are some sellers who are content with selling minimum quantity, make to order. As and when the order comes, they're happy to do it, sitting at the comfort of their homes, being, housemakers, homemakers. I think that kind of audience also.
So Vittal, and this is in the interest of people who are thinking of marketplaces, right? And you successfully established a marketplace with 22,600. Is that number correct? 22,600
enough,
creators.
enough of them.
26 and a half
26,000,
thousand.
26 and a half. Sorry. So that's a really large number of creators today, right? But you would have to start with one, two, three, four, right? So that the first 100 would be the critical mass that
Right.
you had to acquire.
Right.
Now, when you speak to those first 100, you don't have customers buying on at your doorstep. So what was it that you spoke to them to convince them to come to this platform and sell here? Because it's a catch 22. Why should I come there? There is nobody buying, so you would have seen that kind of resistance. How did you address that?
Marketplaces, like you already mentioned, right, are the easiest to start, the hardest to run, always, right? Because you always have the chicken and egg problem, right? Whom do you
Correct.
address first? For whom do you solve first? So
Right.
when we started off, I would say that we wanted to understand what the sellers are currently looking at avenues to sell. How are they selling? And what are their challenging points? And what are they looking to achieve out of their sales? That is essentially how we put it. So
Mhm.
when we understood that, let's for example say payouts happen minimum 30 days cycle. Okay. So they sell today, you have to wait 30
Right.
days for the payment cycle. Second was lack of transparency in commission. So till they make a sale, till they get money in their bank account, they still don't know how much of commission they have to pay to the marketplace or an agent. Okay. And this is only in marketplaces. If they have to sell directly to consumer, they can't afford to have a storefront. And of course, not every storefront is going to catch eyeballs because of the location. Correct?
Correct.
Initial capital is needed, which they don't have. And when they
Right.
involve agents, they need to see how many agents are getting involved. We understood there are 3 to 4 average number of agents involved to sell a decent homemade product, and these are from tier 2 cities. I'm not even going to the depth of rural India, right?
Okay.
So 3 to 4 agents, commission is all distributed. Finally, what they make is very small amount in terms of net sales. So we understood that there are multiple problems, but we can't do everything at once. So we thought, let us solve one by one. What is it they want? They want faster payouts because they cannot wait for
Mhm.
30 days always, right? So we said the day you deliver, the day the customer says, perfect, product is fine, there is no breakage, I'm happy with the product. It usually takes 2 to 3 working days maximum based on the product where it is being shipped across India. I'm talking. Yes, okay. Real time payout gets generated with us. Okay. So what this happens is this encourages the seller to start telling in his network as compared to other people, can you please buy only on Create of all my products? I don't want to sell anywhere else because of convenience, right? And he says, I'm happy to pay you more if you are able to give me this convenience. I don't have to follow up with you 10 times like other places. I don't have to give away a lot of my commission because you have started off this way. So I think they all are fine with the monetary aspect. They're just not fine with the way convenience is being. So this is how you start with one solution, look at some small community to begin with, and then try to extrapolate that in another region, another region. You need a lot of patience. I always tell first time entrepreneurs that if you are launching any product, it should not be the best looking product or most technologically advanced product. You don't need that. Are you solving to your consumer? Is the consumer ready to pay? That is essentially all that matters.
Right.
And something which I have always come up with is the 4P principle. If your problem is painful enough and you have paying people, your idea is going to take off. That's all that matters. Right.
Right.
So this is how we start marketplaces.
Vittal, I have a follow-up
That's good.
question on that because there was an interesting point that you made about if you're solving a problem and people are willing to pay for that. So just recently, Uber CEO made a statement in fun. He said Indians are very demanding, and then they don't pay for anything.
Okay.
So and that happens with customers, right? So even if you are solving their problems and you're taking away their pain, sometimes they just don't want to pay, and or they want to pay you, but you don't agree on what they think is the value. So there is always this gap between value received and value perceived, right? So there is this gap. How do you as an entrepreneur bridge that gap?
I think one, when you're trying to address a problem through one of their solutions, right? We keep getting this a lot as well. Some people come and say, you know what, this product is very expensive. I can get this much cheaper elsewhere. You know?
Correct.
So we do say, see, it is not about a price disparity here because you might get a product outside, but it is what this artisan deserves at the end of it. So they are putting in
Mhm.
the effort. We have stood by our ground. We are definitely not the most economical platform in India. I keep telling this to multiple people also. We are not anywhere close to economical, but the quality what you get, you are going to come back again. Our retention is at close to 60% month on month. People come back and keep making more purchases because of the quality of products. We also vet these products. When you talk of the Indian audience and the consumer market overall, we are spoiled by choices. Right? We are spoiled by choices. Right. There are deep discounts which are being run by a lot of players, which are eventually taken over by the company itself and passed on to the consumer as a buyer. Data is one of the cheapest in the world, right? Internet, for me, a GB costs, I would say, roughly around 30, 40 rupees, just to put it out in that perspective.
Right.
It's one of the cheapest in the world. So everything is at your fingertips. And once everything is at your fingertips, right, you have a lot of choices to look at. And look at the segment where we are focusing on. These are non-essentials. These are not commodities for daily use. We don't say
Correct.
pulses. This is not grocery. Correct. So once you are in that urgent need segment called groceries, daily deliveries, like the Zeptos, Blinkits, which delivers groceries in 15 minutes. These are not food which gets perished in a couple of hours, right? These are not fresh
Correct.
products. So the industry where we plan and are segmented to be in is a place which is for lifestyle at the end of it. So when we put out lifestyle products, it comes with a lot of choice for these people. So I would say positioning quality is something which is very critical. And it does take a lot of funneling to get these people to go try our products, because there are some people who come and say, you know what, I purchased these products on so and so platform. We are not happy with the product, but now we would like to buy it here and see how it is. So they need to go through that life cycle of a buyer. Marketing only takes you to the door of the consumer. At the end of the day, it is the decision of the consumer who says, I want to let this offer in versus that. So I would say it is hard to penetrate to consumers day to day. Like I said, spoiled by choices. It also depends on how you keep branding yourself again and again, how you package it and deliver to those consumers. Finally, once it is delivered, you are now at the mercy of the consumer to say, okay, this is a product which I wanted. Now that is only in your control, which we want to deliver. Rest, it is always a play and try method, which we keep trying.
That's true.
That I'm just absorbing everything that you said because as an entrepreneur, this is also something that I'm I'm thinking every day. How do we deliver value? How do we determine what is valuable or what is going to be perceived value? That's like the first question that we keep asking to ourselves because And then you speak with customers or potential customers, and then you realize, okay, your interpretation of value versus their interpretation of value, sometimes there's a mismatch, and you have to bring as close as a alignment as possible. So that is wonderful to hear directly from you, Vittal, on this. And you have a very interesting new startup which is focusing on startups. I think it's called Pod. Can you tell us a little bit about what is Pod and why are you so passionate about this new adventure that you have started on?
Yeah. So the genesis of Pod is also interesting. It doesn't have a fascinating story like Create, right? But it has gone more with my experience of how I was not able to invest in a systematic manner as an
Mhm.
angel investor or a day-to-day investor as well. Plus, at the same time, having raised funds on my previous startup, it was not a seamless process. So it did take me a couple of months, a lot of follow-ups, multiple rejections, of course. And at the same time, at the end of the day, money in the bank took much longer than what we had all anticipated. So we thought there is definitely a gap which can be solved, and there are certain elements which can be productified. That is how we started off Pod Invest as a platform in India 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. And the intention was to streamline for founders to go and raise their first and second check, which is usually the most difficult stage to raise funds, I would usually say, because there you don't have a product yet. Maybe you don't have a lot of paying customers, but it is just your passion which ignites a potential investor to look at, and they back the founder. I usually say angel investors back the founders, not the businesses, because the business is not yet built. It'll take a couple of
Correct.
years to build the business, right? So you're betting more on the founder. So wanted to build something where it is much more accessible, streamlined for the founders to focus only on fundraising and no extra gimmicks involved. And an everyday investor who has some disposable income, right? I myself, being an NRI earlier, was looking at multiple avenues to invest in the Indian markets. And only when you're away from India, your roots to India also strengthen, something which I have experienced myself. So start thinking, what can I contribute back into the Indian economy, right? So all of those things add to that. And we wanted to productify that process, make it seamless, make quality deals available to people who want to put money into those startups. So I'll give you a short example. There was one doctor in Germany who wanted to, invest in a health tech company in India, but didn't know where to approach. They did find a couple of sources, approached them. He then understood that it is just the money they take, but he wanted to play an active role. So that became a good match point for us to showcase that, hey, here is one health tech startup. You can invest and go directly onto the cap table of that company. This way, you are now a shareholder in the company, not through another vehicle, right? So this added value by bringing skin in the game for that senior doctor who was also one of the dean
Correct.
in large medical. Through that, he was able to bring in some money, and the founder needed some distributor network in the health tech industry, which this dean
Mhm.
opened up. That company became profitable. So I think
Correct.
add value being an angel investor by not just putting the money. And
Mhm.
I think that was something which we saw a very minute level to begin with from the last 2 years. So far, we have done around 38 deals on the platform, paperless, transparent to everybody, compliant with all
Nice.
the regulations, seamless. We close deals end to end in 3 to 4 weeks, which is unheard of, including paperwork. So we have workflow set up. Else, all the transactions happen offline. It takes months together. Founder calls investors multiple times. Investor is vacationing somewhere, doesn't want to pick the call. Uh, the investor reaches out to the founder, asks, where is my share certificate? Where is my agreement? I have sent you the money. Where are you? You are absconding. All of those things are something which are slowly getting eliminated through a platform like this.
This is beautiful. With this investors who express interest and then they start ghosting you also is a problem, right? I've seen that personally many a times where people will express interest and they'll be like very curious about what you're doing, and you tell them everything, and there is now a time when you have to shake hands. That's when people start ghosting you. So that
I think
I think God is solving that problem beautifully.
I tell the founders, I don't pitch anything about the platform or technological use cases. I tell the
Mhm.
founders, in 3 days, you will get a yes or a no from us, so that you are not
That is
running around waiting for something to happen. Hope is a very powerful tool which can either catalyze your vision or destroy your motivation. So this is something which I have understood as a founder, and I don't want to play around with that hope of a founder, which is why we say in 4 days maximum we say no, this is not going to happen, so that he's at least clear that it is not.
Vittal, your last statement reminds me of this one quote in Hindi, and it's there's a little bit of fun involved here, which is "रुलाएगा क्या पगले," So this,
And there's another one. There's another one. तुमसे ना हो पाएगा.
no, but the hope. I think the hope is the essence here, right? Where especially with entrepreneurs, first time founders, yes, they are hopeful. But
Yeah.
then there are also second time and third time and fourth time founders of people who have tried this models in the past. They've knocked on doors, not seen those doors open. So they're always, their hopes are very thin, and their the motivation that they need at that time is really important, because as an entrepreneur, I think I don't I don't worry as much as about how much did I sell, right? I'm more worried about how many doors was I able to open, or how many people were interested in what I was talking about, right? So
Right.
that interest and that hope, the support that comes along with it. And sometimes it's not about the money. It's also about getting the right advice at the right time. So that is, so if you're able to give somebody a response in 3 days
Mm.
is really actionable, then they can also adjust and change strategies. Whittle, you mentioned it's not about the idea or the company, it is about the founder. So you're looking at the founder. So are you looking for achievements of the founder, or you're looking for certain traits? So because that's they somebody may have achievements in the bank, in the sense been to the IITs or the IIMs of the world, or they've come from a very rich history of achievements that are celebrated. And somebody is just out of college with a great idea, good energy, but they don't have that kind of history. So what do you look for? Or is it a mix of everything, or you're looking for strong credentials or strong aspiration?
I have never been a fan of strong credentials because one, I don't have those credentials. So I don't know what to look for in a credential person. So that is one of the things. But having said that, most of this level of investments, at this stage when pre-seed typically or very early seed stage startups, it drives down to intuition. Right? So when I am able to relate, and investing is all driven by perspectives also and motivation. It's very simple in the donation world. You donate because you feel good about, you know, or you have gone through some journey like that. But when it comes to investing, there are returns involved. There is certain level of expectations involved, and there are much more levels of motivations too. Correct. So when I look at investing in founders, I look if the founder one is aware and clear of what he is actually looking to do, or he or she is looking to do. That clarity is for me very important, right? So I don't look at fancy tools. I don't look at chat GPT, AI driven, nothing of that sort. Are you able to put a pen and paper together and explain me what you are trying to build and why you are the person who is trying to build, right? So that convincing ability is what I look at, and how much sellable is this founder. At the end of the day, it does not matter whether you're this founder, co-founder, CEO, CO, nothing. You are the first and the last salesperson of the company. That is what I keep telling. If you are not able to
Correct.
sell it to people, nobody will be able to buy it. Very simple. You sell it to your employees, you sell it to your investors, sell it to consumers. Forget everybody. You sell this idea to yourself first. If you are not convinced of your own sales, you will not take it anywhere. So 90% I rely on those intentions and see if we are actually having that possibility to gauge those things. We don't have any metrics defined to gauge if the founder is fundable or not. But there are some principles which I'm sure a lot of people in this world have been following. They look at certain traits. But for me, hunger to do things is what I look at. I was hungry at a particular point in time in my life when I didn't have a job. The same hunger I look for people, I'm able to relate to that quickly. I get attached to that quickly. So that is one of the things which I look for in my thesis. And of course, the rest of the things which I've already mentioned in the investment circle, like the market, how big is the market? Are these founders ready to pivot if there is a downfall in the market? Because no business starts the same and ends the same. It never happens then. There is pivoting happens. Are they able to accept feedback? Are they able to accept rejection? So all of these things goes in one conversation or two conversation of couple of hours with them. At the end of the day, you're still taking that bet or the risk, right? It might turn out to be true or it might turn out to be false. But you always have to believe that it was my decision to go for this and there should not be any regrets.
That is excellent. So, hunger and clarity, those are the two most important traits that you're looking for, Vittal. And it's interesting you mentioned this. So, our last guest was Brendan Rogers, the founder of 2AM VC. I know you have some history with him, and if you want to talk about what that was, and he also is mentioned the same sort of traits. So he's also looking for that hunger and the passion in the founder. And it is also the clarity of thought. Interestingly, both of you are not so focused on how revolutionary is the idea, right? So you're not looking at revolutionary ideas. Of course, there has to be some aspect of that in the idea or in the business, right? It has to make sense in that sense. But your stronger focus is more on who's running this business and why are they running this business and how clear are they about their vision. So I think that's a very important message that goes back to our listeners. And can you tell us a little bit about you and Brendan?
Yeah, I think one, I don't know him in person. He doesn't know me in person. But there was this common crowdfunding campaign which he had run, several years ago on Kickstarter, and I was part of that funding team, which was working back in to fund those campaigns. So that is how I know of his campaign, and later on that got acquired. He went on
Correct.
to move from the campaign to becoming a full-fledged company, which then got acquired, and he made a good amount of exit through that company. Since then, he's been investing through VC, through his own terms as an angel investor as well. And I think a couple of months back when I saw some of his posts as well, I think it all resonated to a point that India is the country to be. India is the
Correct.
destination. What are you doing elsewhere? India is the place. I think that narrative is something which we have been seeing from the last couple of years. I'll give you another example, which is non-business oriented or non-startup oriented is you see a lot of influencers who are on the content creation side, be it YouTube or
Correct.
Instagram. These are the people who have no connection with India, are reviewing Indian movie trailers and movie reactions. And they're able to
Correct.
get a substantial number of followers, right?
Correct.
So you see that whole trend is moving towards that side when you put it out.
Mhm.
And why? Because we all have understood and we have shown that the passion is just bubbling out of India entirely. And that has got waves across the world when you look at it. And definitely a good point where you do get good people, you do get not so good people as well to invest in. But at the end of the day, it is your call to decide when you want to invest. Like I said, there are multiple stages to invest. Are you that risk taker to believe, or are you foolish enough to believe that somebody can get you good enough returns? It all depends on your decision making. That is how I look at it. You do it the structured way through a VC, you do it the unstructured way, being an angel investor, again, is your call. Nobody pushes you to that, but there is enough content already in the markets to make you an educated investor. That is for sure. And if it is not there, you should always reach out to somebody in the ecosystem just to keep asking people, hey, I am looking to invest in XYZ company or XYZ. This is my first investment. What do you think I should look for? And I've always told people, more than green flags, you should always look and avoid the red. That is how I always put it out. If you are able to avoid the red flags, that is your first flag.
I love how you have a play with words, Vittal. You're also a wordsmith in my head, right? I love how you spun that. Um, it is it is very powerful to be in a position where you're able to think about these sort of strategies, right? To be able to invest, to be able to bring change. Now, when you look at India, or when we even spoke with Brendan, he mentioned, like you mentioned, that there's active interest in India. There was one thing that he also mentioned about Bharat. So he said, I look at India as the tier ones, the Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, and Chennai circuit. That's the India that a lot of people outside of India are familiar with. But then there is this concept of Bharat, which is in the tier two, tier three, tier four, and the villages. I think when you look at the work that you did with Create, that has gone into that rural mass, and you've been able to kind of uh, bring visible and substantial change in that space. Where do you see that space? Because you're so close to, I would say, Bharat, okay? Because that's the terminology that he has used, and I think you're also in that. You're pretty strong in that space. Where do you see that space evolving? Because when we look at tier one enterprises, they're all about, we're doing commerce, and we're doing AI, and there's so much of technology heavy conversations in that tier one circuit. What sectors are most evident in that tier two, tier three ecosystem?
See, I would say that's also driven by perspectives. And I'm definitely no expert to generalize a country of, $30 trillion economy kind of, right? So I'm too small. But from what I've understood at the ground level is, you can put it in a couple of stages. There was a time where we were focusing, you just consider how we all grew up, right? And how our parents grew up from that era. So there was a time when getting a government job was priority number one. Right? Secure job, life secure, family secure. Right? And then move to a state where, okay, now there are some corporates which are non-government but high pay. Are you willing to take that risk? It might be unstable. Are you willing to take the risk? There are some people who move that stage. Then there were some people who were passionate on studying. They knew that there are some constraints to study in the homeland, and they could prosper much more outside of India. So these people took that risk and moved out on it, right? So it was a small revolution within families itself, which started off. And then you had these tier 4, tier 5, all these places who started telling, these are the farmers and their children are moving out to cities to find jobs, be it whatever jobs it was. Some people were like, I'm in the city. Some people would be like, okay, I moved out of the country so that I'm getting a job. So people started looking at this shift which has happened in a way where now tier 3, tier 4 people are telling, you know what, my father is a farmer. He has these many acres of land. He spends 20 hours only solving these certain aspects, which are very manual and tedious to do. I now have a solution which interestingly can be replicated in multiple other farmlands and can reduce 20 hours of efforts to 12 hours of efforts. So they're trying to solve their own problems at the end of the day. And this put out on a business model canvas, this essentially turns out to be a startup. So this is how people are looking inward. And when I mean inward, this is really inward. They're trying to solve their own backyard problem. They are not trying to impress the society. They're not trying to impress something else or for peer pressure doing something. These are real world problems which they're trying to solve, which is why everybody says the gold mine is in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Consumer market is in tier 1 cities, which is where it's the market. And you divide India into that segment. India itself has gone to that startup mode. So India itself is going into a startup currently, which is now in pre-seed to seed stage, funding internally, trying to bootstrap and grow out of the whole world market. And they're trying to make the world as that. This is how I would like to keep it.
That's beautiful, Vittal. And again, you're reminding me of Prahlad's book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, right? It is essentially where we are seeing India change dramatically and solving your own problems, right? So solving your backyard first and then winning the Backyard of the Year award to then replicate that, especially in the US over here. There is this turf war for the front yard of the year, the yard of the year, and so with the upcoming summer, all me and my neighbors, we are all going to get into that competition. So and every time I am going to be in my garden, this is the quote that's going to be in the back of my mind, is to solve the problems of my backyard first, right? And that becomes a model, or that hopefully becomes a startup that can scale. So that's beautiful. So where do you see Pod in the next 5 years from now?
So I would like to put this in a different way. Right? So
Okay.
what, like I said, the genesis was to streamline the existing unorganized markets for the founder to raise funds, their first or second check, and for the investors to put their first or second check. That is essentially how it all started for us. Next 5 years, the way I see it is, it has to be the point where a founder who wants to start his company or has an idea thinks of Pod as that first entry point to build his business. That is how I would like to see Pod. Capital is, of course, priority number one. And it has to be in a way where, hey, you know what? I am listed on Ford. That itself brings him certain level of merit to say that I am listed on Ford purely because we do have a stringent process to get startups listed. So out of thousands of applications we receive, we have till now only accepted around 78, 80 applications alone. So that is why we want to set a gold standard, compliance, be filings. So these are the things which will come back and bite you the most later on, not at peak. Which is why we want to make startups, one, investable at first check, second check, and act as a plug and play to larger funds who then say, hey, you know what, these are the startups which are funded through Pod. So I'm sure they would have had at least 20-30% more better compliance than what we'll actually be spending time on. Now that reduces their time to fund this startup from 6 to 9 months to maybe 3 to 6 months. And that,
Right.
I would say, could be a phenomenal shift in building businesses as a whole in it.
As seen on Pod, is going to be an interesting tagline that I'm going to be watching out for. Then, in that case, Vittal.
Absolutely.
So I think, do you think we are ready for our rapid fires?
Yes, always. I think as a founder, I cannot know it.
Always. Because you have so many people, you ask for rapid fire to so many people, startups and companies. Okay. So it's a very simple one. We have, very few questions and very simple ones for you. So coffee or tea?
Filter coffee.
Coffee. Okay. Early bird or night
Filter.
owl? Filter coffee.
I think we should stop asking this
Yeah.
question to people in Bangalore because I lived in Bangalore, Vittal. So in fact, I also traveled that Udupi, Bhatkal, Murudeshwar, that Sakleshpur, that belt, the coastal belt. It is so beautiful, and I also have some really good memories about and filter coffee. So I think moving forward, we have to stop asking this question to anybody in Bangalore because it has to be coffee and it has to be filter coffee.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is early bird or night owl? Okay. One book that has inspired you the most?
I think the psychology of selling.
The psychology of selling. And okay, so that's an important one for the startups. The psychology of selling, because it's coming from yeah. Okay. Favorite city for tech startups outside Silicon Valley?
Bangalore.
Bangalore. Okay. One startup or tech you are excited about right now?
There are a lot of startups which are in the health tech space, I would say. One industry which I am really loving the way artificial intelligence has assisted in. So there are certain startups which are in genome sequencing, which are able to detect early stage cancer. So I think that is going to create a lot of impact, and I'm rooting for such startups.
In fact,
Oh,
that's ironic that you mentioned that, Vittal. Just yesterday, I was reading about a startup by Vivek Wadhwa.
Okay.
He's a very strong influencer in North America, and he's coming up with a startup called Vionics Biosciences.
Okay.
And over there, their aim is to create they create a breathalyzer sort of a device where you breathe into it and it detects cancer. So the early detection of cancer without being, it's not invasive. You are able to get results in real time, and is really game changing. So there's a lot of machine learning and AI that is being invoked into or invested into that platform. But yeah, that's definitely something that I was very interested in when I read that.
okay. All right. Okay. So one leisure activity that sparks creativity.
I play with my dogs. I also rescue some injured dogs on the streets. So I love dogs.
Yeah, that's a very caring attitude. Nowadays, a lot of people are against dogs. You see it in TV and the press. So that's, I love dogs myself. So.
Rahul is a pet parent.
Fa-
Rahul is a pet parent.
I'm a pet parent. So favorite tool or app for productivity?
I've been a little old school. I love Trello and its automation. Simple. but efficient.
Okay. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. So the last one is a dream collaboration or partnership for your business.
Doing collaboration.
Or partnership for pod.
I think integrating government initiatives through the platform is going to be perfect in alignment. They would act as the PR layer and the marketing campaign layer. We would act as the transactional layer.
Mhm.
Perfect marriage.
Great. Great. So have you done anything about it? Have you taken any
Small
steps about it?
steps, yes, I've started.
That is excellent.
All right. Right.
Again, I think thanks for that, Rahul, and thank you so much, Vittal, for sharing so many insights. I think this is one episode that I'm going to play back and listen to and also start making notes, because it's important for us in our entrepreneurial journey to learn from people like you. As the last piece of advice, what would you tell to an aspiring entrepreneur? If, forget everything else, this is that one thing that I would want you to do, what would that be?
I think believing in yourself is super underrated, because as an entrepreneur, many things you decide, be it in terms of hiring, pivoting, building something, reaching out to consumers. A lot of things revolve around you as a founder or as an entrepreneur. So a small element of doubt in that is absolutely acceptable, but always talk to yourself and say that things will always be better, for you. If not, I've seen a lot of founders quit midway, get demotivated halfway. It is something which I've seen a lot in very young entrepreneurs, especially the younger set of people. We have seen college kids, school kids starting their ideas, something which is nice, but they are not able to handle that rejection. So rejection is fine. One of the TED Talks which I did was I put out a large display, slide, and showed, chole and puri bhaji there. People say this is what normal people eat for breakfast. We eat rejection for breakfast, lunch, dinner as entrepreneurs. So embracing that as a quality is very important. Accepting failure is absolutely fine. And when you need help, please speak out. Please speak out. The worst you are going to get is no. Nothing worse can happen beyond that. Please speak out. There are certain set of people who will definitely, worst case, at least talk to you. If they are not going to help you, it's fine, but they're at least going to talk to you. That is very much. If not, entrepreneurship is super lonely. Nobody tells you that. So accept that loneliness and ensure there are people around when you're really feeling very low. That is all that is needed. Businesses will figure it out. Absolutely no issue. You figure out yourself, the business will run automatically.
That is beautiful. I think we all have to build that immunity for rejection. We have to develop that muscle in ourselves. It is advice that I'm hearing very often from seasoned entrepreneurs, from investors like you. And I think we have to play this in loop in our heads, that a rejection is not the end of this world, right? So we have to move on, and we keep trying. And I think there is always this silver lining that you'll get there, right? So
Yeah.
I think
I usually get that small anecdote from, this Rocky movie, right? Rocky Balboa.
right.
He tells son about it. He says, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. That's something which is very nice.
That is beautiful. Once again, thank you so much, Vittal, for this wonderful session. We are really inspired, and we look forward to coming back to you and talking to you more about all the great work that you're going to be doing. And hopefully, we'll have more sessions in the future. So thank you once again on behalf of everybody on the Indian Community Podcast and from our listeners and viewers. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you.